The engine rumbles beneath him. The smell of diesel and spent gunpowder fills the cramped turret. Outside, through the narrow vision slit, the French countryside rolls by, but Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool is not looking at the fields or the hedgerows. He is scanning for death. And today, like every day for the past 53 days, death is looking right back at him. The date is August 19th, 1944. The town is Fromental, and the man they call War Daddy is about to add another dozen German soldiers to a body count that has already made him a legend among the men of the 3rd Armored Division. But this time he does not know that the danger will come not from the enemy in front, but from the sky above, from his own side. In 81 days of relentless combat across France, Belgium, and Germany, this one tank commander and his crew will destroy 12 German tanks, including Panthers and Tigers. They will eliminate 258 armored vehicles. They will eliminate over 1,000 enemy soldiers and capture 250 more. All from the turret of a Sherman tank, a machine the Germans mocked as a steel coffin. This is the story of how a Texas boxer who once sparred with Joe Louis became the deadliest tank commander in American history. A man who refused to play by the rules of armored warfare. A man whose crazy trick was simple and suicidal. He charged. Before we dive deeper into the mud and fire of Normandy, if you find these stories of forgotten heroes as compelling as I do, consider subscribing to the channel. We bring you the untold chapters of military history, the ones the textbooks forgot. Now, let us go back to where this legend began. Lafayette Green Pool was born on July 23, 1919, on a small farm in Odom, Texas. The land was flat, the summers were brutal, the winters were short, and like most boys in South Texas during the Depression, Lafayette learned early that nothing in this world came free. He had a twin brother named John Thomas and a sister named Tenny Mae. The family scraped by, but Lafayette had something that could not be taught. He had hands like hammers and reflexes, like a rattlesnake. He graduated from high school in Taft, Texas in 1938. He had been class valedictorian at his all-boys Catholic academy. But academics were not his only talent. In the ring, Pool was a natural. He hit hard. He moved fast. And he had an almost unnerving calm when the punches started flying. While studying engineering at Texas College of Arts and Industries in Kingsville, he boxed his way to regional success. He became the division boxing champion and won the United States Army regional belt. He was even offered a chance to fight at the Golden Gloves Championship in Chicago. Most young men would have jumped at the opportunity, but Pool turned it down. A new batch of tanks had arrived at his training unit, the latest variant of the M3 tank. And Lafayette Pool did not want to fall behind the other tank commanders. He wanted to master the machine. It was a decision that would shape the course of his life, and it would save the lives of countless men under his command. War was coming. Everyone could feel it. On June 13, 1941, Pool left college and enlisted in the Army at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. He was assigned to the newly forming 3rd Armored Division, then being organized at Camp Beauregard, Louisiana. The division would not see combat for another 3 years. But in that time, Pool would transform himself from a boxer into a tanker. He trained at the Desert Training Center in the Mojave Desert. He trained at Camp Pickett, Virginia. He trained at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. And he trained hard. Not just in the tank, but in the ring, too. Pool became known as an aggressive sergeant. He pushed his men relentlessly. He demanded precision. He refused a commission as an officer, not because he was not qualified, but because he wanted to stay close to the front. He wanted to be in the fight, not behind a desk. And then, in early 1944, something remarkable happened. The 3rd Armored Division was stationed in Somerset, England, waiting for the order to cross the Channel. Pool heard that the heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber himself, was in Liverpool giving exhibition bouts for the troops. Pool volunteered to fight him. It was supposed to be a friendly sparring match. But Pool got carried away. He started landing real punches, solid shots that made Lewis notice. The champion pulled Pool into a clinch and whispered in his ear, "White man, I am going to teach you a big lesson." And then Joe Louis proceeded to give Lafayette Pool the beating of his life. There was no knockout. But the message was clear. Pool could take a punch, and he was not afraid of anyone. On June 23, 1944, the 3rd Armored Division landed on Omaha Beach. The sand was still stained from D-Day. The wreckage of landing craft littered the shoreline. The smell of death hung in the humid air. But for Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool and his crew, this was the moment they had spent 3 years preparing for. They rolled off the ship and headed for the front lines. Pool commanded a Sherman tank, the M4A1. It was a good tank by Allied standards, fast, reliable, easy to produce. But against German armor, it was outclassed. The Panther tank had a long 75mm cannon that could punch through a Sherman from over a mile away. The Tiger was even worse. Its 88mm gun could tear a Sherman apart before the American crew even knew they were being targeted. The standard doctrine for Sherman crews was to avoid direct confrontation, flank the enemy, wait for air support, use numbers. The ratio was supposed to be 5 Shermans for every German heavy tank, 5 American tanks to take out 1 Panther or Tiger. Those were terrible odds, and Lafayette Pool had no intention of following them. His tank bore a name painted on the turret, "In the Mood," the same name as the Glenn Miller song that was playing everywhere that summer. It was a fitting name, because when Pool was in that tank, he was always in the mood for a fight. His crew was a tight unit. They had trained together. They trusted each other completely. In the driver's seat was Corporal Wilbert Richards. They called him Red because of his hair. Red was steady, reliable. He could put the tank exactly where Pool needed it, even under fire. In the assistant driver position was Private First Class Bertrand Close. His nickname was Schoolboy. He operated the bow machine gun. His job was to sweep the infantry, to keep German soldiers with Panzerfausts and grenades away from the tank. He was the eyes and ears of the lower hull. The gunner was Corporal Willis Aller. They called him Groundhog. Aller was a nervous man by nature, jumpy, always on edge. But when he looked through those gun sights, he became something else entirely, something cold, something precise. It was said that Aller saw all of France through the sights of his cannon. The sooty imprint of tanker goggles was permanently etched into his face. And finally, the loader, Technician 5th grade Delbert Boggs. His nickname was Jailbird. No one ever asked where that name came from. Boggs was fast, incredibly fast. He could load a round into the breech before the last shell casing had even hit the floor. That speed would save their lives more times than any of them could count. Together, these 5 men would become the deadliest tank crew in American military history. The 3rd Armored Division moved north. Their first action came at the Villa Fossard salient, north of Saint-Lô. The area was still crawling with remnants of the 2nd Panzer Division. The Germans were battered from the massed Allied bombing, but they were not finished, and they had plenty of fight left. Pool did not wait for orders to engage. He did not wait for air support. He did not wait for the 5-to-1 odds that the doctrine demanded. He saw the enemy, and he attacked. In his very first engagement, his tank destroyed over 70 German soldiers and 3 armored vehicles in less than 10 minutes. The men of the 32nd Armored Regiment could not believe what they had just witnessed. A single Sherman had shattered a German strong point. When the dust settled, the rest of the platoon rolled up. The infantry climbed out of the mud. They stared at the smoking ruins, and then they stared at Pool's tank sitting in the middle of the field, engine idling. As if nothing had happened, word spread fast. They started calling him the Texas tanker, but that name would not last. Soon there would be a better one. On June 29th, just 6 days after landing, Pool's luck ran out for the first time. Combat Command A attacked at Villers-Fossard. The fighting was intense. The hedgerows were murder. Every field was a potential ambush. And in the chaos, a German soldier with a Panzerfaust got close enough to hit in the mood. The shaped charge burned through the armor. Pool and his crew bailed out. They scrambled into a ditch, hearts pounding, ears ringing. The tank was finished, but they were alive, and Pool was already thinking about getting back in the fight. By July 1st, Pool had a new tank, another Sherman, another M4A1. But this one had the new 76mm gun, longer barrel, more penetration, still not as good as a Panther, but closer, much closer. He painted the same name on the turret, In the Mood. And then he went back to war. The following weeks were a blur of fire and movement. Operation Cobra began on July 25th. The Allied breakout from Normandy. The 3rd Armored Division pushed south, then east, then north again. Pool was always at the front, always leading, always looking for trouble. The other tank commanders drew straws to decide who would take the lead position. The point man, the first one to round every corner, the first one into every ambush. It was the most dangerous spot in the column, the tank most likely to get hit first. Pool did not draw straws. He simply told the others, "I am leading this time." His crazy trick was not really a trick at all. It was a philosophy. The Sherman was outgunned. Everyone knew that. The German tanks could destroy them from ranges where the American 75 could not penetrate their armor. So Pool closed the distance. He charged straight at the enemy. He got so close that the German advantages disappeared. At point-blank range, even a Sherman could be deadly. It was insane. It was suicidal. And it worked. In late August, Pool's platoon was skirting south of the town of Colombiers, France. The hedgerows were thick. Visibility was terrible. And, without warning, a German Panther rolled directly in front of In the Mood, less than 50 feet away. Close enough to see the rivets on the hull, the Panther fired first and missed. The nervous German gunner rushed his shot. The round screamed past Pool's tank and exploded in a hedgerow behind them. The Panther fired again and missed again. 2 shots at point-blank range, both wide. Pool did not miss. He screamed the command, "Gunner, fire!" Groundhog Aller, his eyes pressed to the sights, responded instantly. The Sherman's gun barked. The round punched through the Panther's turret and ripped it clean off the hull. The German tank stood there for a moment, smoke pouring from the open wound where its turret had been. Then it collapsed. But the fight was not over. Pool had stumbled into a hornet's nest. The remains of the 2nd Panzer Division were reconnoitering in the area. German tanks and armored cars seemed to emerge from everywhere. The radio crackled with frantic voices, orders, curses, the sound of men trying to survive. Colonel Richardson, commander of the 32nd Regiment, listened to the chaos unfold. He heard Pool's voice cutting through the static, calm and steady, directing fire, coordinating movement. By the time darkness fell, it was over. Pool and In the Mood had destroyed 2 enemy tanks and at least 2 armored cars. Schoolboy Close had eliminated the dismounted crews with the bow machine gun. The action brought Pool up for another medal. By this point, he was running out of room on his chest. The 3rd Armored Division earned a new nickname during this campaign, the Spearhead Division, because wherever the advance went, Pool and his men were at the tip of the spear. On one particular night engagement, Pool was about to order his driver to halt for the day. The light was fading. Visibility was nearly zero, but just as he opened his mouth to give the command, a shape materialized in the darkness, less than 50 feet away. A German 40mm dual-purpose anti-aircraft gun emplacement. There was no time to think. Pool shouted, "Gunner, fire!" No warning, no aiming, pure instinct. Oller, his eyes perpetually pressed against the sights, responded before his brain had time to catch up. The round flew, and it hit the enemy gun dead center. The German position disintegrated in a flash of fire and metal. That was the thing about Pool's crew. They had become an extension of his will. When he thought, they acted. When he saw, they fired. There was no hesitation, no debate, just seamless, deadly efficiency. If you are still with me, and I hope you are, because we are about to reach the darkest chapter of this story, take a moment and hit that like button. Your support helps bring these forgotten heroes back to life. Now back to September 1944 and the killing fields outside Aachen. The summer of 1944 had been brutal for the German army. The Normandy breakout had shattered their defensive lines. Paris fell on August 25th. The Allies raced east across France and Belgium, and at the tip of the spear, always leading, was Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool. By early September, the 3rd Armored Division had reached the German border. They were approaching the Siegfried Line, a massive system of fortifications, bunkers, tank traps, and minefields stretching from the Netherlands to Switzerland. Hitler had built it to be impenetrable, a wall of concrete and steel to protect the fatherland. The fighting had taken its toll on Pool's tank. In the Mood No. 2, his M4A1 with the 76mm gun had been destroyed on August 17th, not by the Germans, by friendly fire. An American P-38 Lightning, searching for enemy armor, had mistaken the lone Sherman for a German tank. The pilot dove and opened fire. The tank was knocked out. Pool and his crew scrambled clear, cursing at the sky. Within days, Pool had his 3rd tank, another M4A1 with the 76 gun. He painted the same name on the turret, In the Mood. He and his crew climbed back inside, and they kept fighting. But something had changed. Corporal Willis Oller, Groundhog, the gunner who had seen all of France through his gun sights, was gone. He had been temporarily transferred back to the United States. His replacement was a young soldier named Private First Class Paul Kenneth King. King was competent, but he was not Oller. The chemistry was different. The timing was off. Pool did not let it slow him down. By mid-September, the 3rd Armored Division was probing the Siegfried Line near the town of Münsterbusch, southeast of Aachen. The terrain was terrible. Narrow roads, dense forests, and concrete bunkers everywhere. The Germans knew every inch of the ground, and they were waiting. On the night of September 19, 1944, Combat Command A was attempting to penetrate the German defenses. Pool, as always, was at the front. His tank crept forward through the darkness. The engine rumbled. The crew was tense. Every shadow could hide a Panzerfaust. Every hedgerow could conceal a panther. They never saw the ambush coming. A German panther was waiting in the darkness. Its crew had chosen their position perfectly. Good cover. Clear field of fire. And when Pool's Sherman rolled into view, they fired. The first round hit, In the Mood on the flank. The impact was massive. Metal shrieked. Sparks flew. The tank shuddered, but did not stop. Pool's driver, Red Richards, immediately threw the Sherman into reverse. They needed to get out, to find cover, to survive. But the Panther fired again. The second round caught the tank just as it was backing over the edge of a ditch. The impact was devastating. The Sherman tipped, rolled, and flipped over into the ditch upside down. The round that flipped the tank also blew Pool out of the commander's hatch. He was thrown clear of the wreckage, spinning through the air like a rag doll. He landed hard in the mud, dazed, bleeding, in agony. The shell fragment had torn through his right leg. The damage was catastrophic. Muscle, bone, tendons, all shredded. Blood poured from the wound, mixing with the French soil. Pool tried to move, tried to think, but the pain was overwhelming. Inside the overturned tank, Private First Class Paul Kenneth King, the replacement gunner, was dead, killed instantly by the same round that had wounded Pool. The rest of the crew scrambled out of the wreckage. Somehow they were alive. but their commander was down, and he was not getting back up on his own. They dragged him to safety. Medics arrived. They worked frantically to stop the bleeding. Pool was loaded onto an ambulance and rushed to a field hospital, but the surgeons took one look at his leg and knew. There was no saving it. The damage was too severe. They would have to amputate. Lafayette Pool lost his right leg 8 inches above the knee. His war was over. In 81 days, from June 27th to September 19th, 1944, Staff Sergeant Lafayette Pool and his crew had accomplished the impossible. They had destroyed 12 confirmed enemy tanks, including Panthers that outclassed them in every measurable way. They had eliminated 258 armored vehicles and self-propelled guns. They had eliminated over 1,000 German soldiers. They had captured 250 more, all from the turret of a Sherman tank. A machine the Germans mocked, a machine that was supposed to need 5 of its kind to take on a single Panther. Pool had proven them wrong, again and again and again. By the time he was wounded, Pool had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the Legion of Merit, the Silver Star, the French Croix de Guerre, with Gold Star. He had been nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor twice. His commanding officer called him the tanker of tankers. But for Lafayette Pool, lying in a hospital bed with one leg gone, none of that mattered. The fight had been everything to him, the crew, the tank, the adrenaline of combat. And now it was over. He was 25 years old, and he would never walk without a prosthetic again. He would never return to the boxing ring, never feel that rush of trading punches with an opponent, never experience the intensity that had defined his entire adult life. The rehabilitation took 22 months, almost 2 years of learning to walk again, learning to live again. Pool was fitted with a prosthetic leg. He was discharged from the Army in June of 1946. He went home to Sinton, Texas. He opened a filling station and garage, tried to settle into civilian life, but the war would not let him go. In 1948, Pool re-enlisted. He was sent to the Transportation Corps. It was not tanks, it was not combat, but it was the Army. And for Pool, that was enough, but he wanted more. He wanted to go home, not to Texas, to the 3rd Armored Division. With the intervention of General Roderick Allen, Pool finally managed to return to his old unit. He became an instructor in automotive mechanics, teaching the next generation of tankers how to keep their machines running, how to survive. He could no longer lead from the front, but he could make sure the men who did were prepared. Pool retired from the United States Army on September 19, 1960, exactly 16 years to the day after his final battle at the Siegfried Line. He held the rank of Chief Warrant Officer, 2nd class. After retirement, he went to business college. He worked as a preacher for $25 a week. He coached Little League baseball, simple things, quiet things, a far cry from the thunder of tank guns and the screaming of shells. But the war had not finished claiming from the Pool family. Lafayette Pool had 8 children with his wife Evelyn, 4 sons and 4 daughters. One of those sons, Jerry Lynn Pool Sr., followed his father into the military. He became a captain in the 5th Special Forces Group, the Green Berets. On March 24, 1970, Captain Jerry Pool was in Cambodia. He was a team leader being extracted by helicopter from 14 miles inside Ratanakiri province. As the helicopter began to climb, it was hit by enemy fire. The aircraft exploded and crashed. Captain Jerry Pool and 6 other soldiers were killed instantly. He was declared missing in action. His remains would not be recovered until April 12, 1995, not identified until June 20, 2001. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Lafayette Pool never spoke publicly about his son's death. Some wounds are too deep for words. On May 30, 1991, Lafayette Green Pool died in his sleep in Killeen, Texas. He was 71 years old. He was survived by his wife Evelyn, by 7 of his children, by grandchildren who would only know him through stories. He is buried at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio, Texas, the same place where he had enlisted 50 years earlier, a young boxer ready to fight. What made Lafayette Pool different from other tank commanders of World War II? The answer is complicated and simple at the same time. He understood something that the doctrine did not account for. The Sherman tank was inferior on paper, thinner armor, smaller gun, slower muzzle velocity. But paper does not win battles. People do. And Pool understood that the advantage of the German tanks, their long-range accuracy, could be neutralized if you were crazy enough to close the distance. Most tank commanders tried to fight the Germans at range. They maneuvered, they flanked, they called for air support. Pool did none of that. He charged straight at the enemy. He closed to ranges so short that the Panther's superior gun meant nothing. At 50 feet, even a Sherman could punch through Panther armor, and at 50 feet the first shot usually won. Pool had spent years in the boxing ring. He understood violence. He understood that sometimes the best defense is overwhelming offense. He understood that hesitation gets you killed. And he brought that philosophy to armored warfare. He also understood the importance of his crew. They were not just soldiers operating a machine. They were a team, a family. Red Richards knew exactly where Pool wanted the tank before Pool said a word. Groundhog Aller could put a round on target in the time it took most gunners to aim. Schoolboy Close kept the infantry away. Jailbird Boggs kept the rounds coming. They moved as one. They fought as one. And Pool trusted them completely. He never second-guessed his gunner, never hesitated to give the order. When Pool saw an enemy, Aller was already pulling the trigger. That kind of trust, that kind of synchronization cannot be taught. It can only be forged in training, in combat, in the crucible of fire. There was something else, too, something harder to define. Pool was not afraid to die, not recklessly, not foolishly, but he had accepted that death was part of the bargain, and that acceptance freed him. He did not hesitate, he did not second-guess, he acted. And that split-second advantage, that willingness to commit fully when others hesitated, made the difference between living and dying, between victory and defeat. The Germans had a term for soldiers like Pool, unberechenbar, unpredictable. They could not figure out what he would do next, because Pool did not fight by their rules. He fought by his own. Today, Lafayette Pool is largely forgotten. You will not find his face on monuments or his name in most history books. He was never featured in a major Hollywood film. There is no statue of him in Washington. But among those who study armored warfare, among those who know the history of the 3rd Armored Division, Pool is a legend. He is recognized as the United States tank ace of aces, the deadliest American tank commander of the Second World War, and possibly of any war. His record of 12 confirmed tank kills and 258 armored vehicle kills has never been matched. But more than the numbers, it is the way he fought that deserves to be remembered. He showed that courage and aggression could overcome technological inferiority. He proved that a well-trained crew, led by a fearless commander, could achieve the impossible. And he paid the price. He lost his leg. He lost his gunner. He lost his son. He carried those wounds for the rest of his life, but he never complained, never sought glory. He just did his job, and then he went home. The crew of In the Mood survived the war. Red Richards, Schoolboy Close, Jailbird Boggs, Groundhog Aller, who was stateside when the final tank was destroyed. They went back to their lives, married, had children, grew old. Most of them never spoke publicly about what they had done. It was a different generation. They did not seek attention. They just served. And then they moved on. But the men who served with them never forgot. The infantrymen who climbed out of the mud after Pool had shattered a German position. The other tank crews who watched In the Mood charge into ambush after ambush and somehow survive. The officers who wrote the medal citations struggling to capture in words what Pool had done. He was the tanker of tankers. As we close this chapter, I want to leave you with one final image. It is the summer of 1944. The hedgerows of Normandy, the smoke of battle hangs in the air, and a Sherman tank named In the Mood is rolling forward alone toward a German position. In the turret, a tall Texan with hands like hammers and reflexes like a rattlesnake scans the horizon. Behind him, his crew waits for his command, ready to fire, ready to die, ready to win. Lafayette Pool did not wait for the odds to be in his favor. He made his own odds. He charged when others retreated. He fought when others hesitated. And in 81 days, he became a legend that the history books forgot. If you have made it this far, thank you. These stories matter. These men deserve to be remembered. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are bringing back the missing pages of military history, one story at a time. Until next time.